questionable things, as well as those things that you know for certain are just plain sin. There are some things we know we do wrong.
That's right.
Yet we do them anyway. Because we just want to do them. We like doing them. And don't realize we are reaping what we're sowing, because sin sometimes is good. Live as children of the light. For the fruit of the light consists of all goodness, righteousness, and truth. And find out what pleases God. The more you can please God, the more blessings you'll get in your life. God blesses those who worship Him in spirit and in truth. Things that are not worth waiting for and receiving from God really aren't worth receiving to come, because God has a way of making things last in our life. There are stark contrasts in malice and injustice and falsehood. That's frustration. Goodness comes from the Greek word which describes love in action. It refers to the giving of oneself. 1 Thessalonians says, always pursue what is good, both by yourself and by all. Life of goodness just doesn't happen. You have to practice self-sacrificing love, a little daily thing. It won't happen forever. You got to do it a day at a time. You just got to practice being good one day at a time, and eventually it'll get good to you. That's how habits are started. Bad habits are started one day at a time. You can do a good habit one day at a time. But you know, walking in the light is not as hard as we want to make it. You just have to walk one day at a time. God has made us righteous before Him. Our life is set for us. The third thing is that walking in the light produces truthfulness. It means the absence of deception. Truth is about what we say, wherever goodness is about and what we do, and righteousness is about how we live. What you say must reflect how you live. Paul says in Ephesians 4, we are to put off falsehood and speak truthfully to our neighbors. That means you don't have to be brutally honest, but you don't have to be brutally lying either. I think I used this analogy in Bible study once. You don't have to tell the person they has to. You can just say, well, that's a nice hat for you. It's not something I would wear. Now you neither said it's ugly, nor have you lied. It's a nice hat for you, because that's why they're wearing it to begin with. Because they think it's nice. Otherwise, they wouldn't have worn it.
Right.
So you really be honest. That's what they wanted to wear. When you go out the house, you chose what you wanted to wear. This morning, I didn't call you all up and tell Brother Jiggers wear a black suit and a blue tie. He wore what he wanted. He could have came here with a pink suit and a red tie. I mean, that's what he wanted to wear, that's fine. More power to you. You wore what you wanted to wear. And it fits you. You all look good in it. It's good for you. I want to wear this blue suit. The Message Bible says, it says, figure it out. What will please Christ, and then do it. You are the subject of the sentence. You need to make it your business to try to find out what pleases God. Find out in the Greek means to do by testing the metal. You experiment. It's a discovery by experimentation. Find out what your calling is. Find out how God wants to use you in your life. Figure out by doing something good, doing something that might be pleasing to Him, and finding out whether you have a gift or a talent for it. Help somebody across the street. Say something nice to somebody. Stop criticizing everything you want to criticize. The more you criticize, the less time you have to say anything is good. Take action must wake up and get out of your grave, partnership with God. Some things he can only do when you are doing it for yourself. God has a way of empowering those who will use their body as a living sacrifice and present themselves holy and acceptable unto thee. If the church was, in the church, I really believe that there are a lot of Rip Van Winkles. I call them Rip Van Winkle Christians who are under the tree, sleeping. And not long after they make the decision to follow Christ, Paul says, wake up. The second part of the verse is an invitation. If you're still living in darkness, arise from the dead. Step into the light. To become the light becomes salvation that Christ offers us. Paul says, I want to know Christ. Yes, I want to know him in the power of his resurrection. I want to participate in his suffering. I want to become like him in his death and attain to the resurrection of the dead. We must understand, Jesus instructed his disciples when he was going here. He said, when I leave here, greater things that you will do than I have done on this earth. And you might ask yourself, how can I experience the power of his resurrection? You must understand that when Christ rose on Sunday morning, he empowered you with a spirit that comes from himself. We must understand. And I heard this, and it really came out when Reverend Morris preached this at the spring convocation. Jesus was limited when he was here on earth because he was a divine person living in the flesh. So despite the fact that he could walk on water, despite the fact that he was able to heal blind folk, despite the fact that he was able to raise Lazarus from the dead, he was still under the limitations of the flesh. When you're in the limitations of the flesh, you just can't do things. But Jesus said, when I leave here, when he died on the cross, it was his flesh that died. It wasn't his spirit that died. His body died. When he rose out of that grave, he was spiritual. He was full of spirit. He had no limitations. There's nothing to hold me back. There's nothing to keep me from living a life of glory. He's given you all power. Paul said, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. You have the power to do more than Christ because you have no limitations. Christ has broken the barriers of sin. You have power to remove your stone. You have power to get out of your graves. You have power to walk right. You have power to talk right. You have power to be healed. You have power to overcome your obstacles. You have power to walk in his presence. You have power to do so many things. Satan cannot destroy someone who is allowing Christ to live in their lives. So what Easter really means, Resurrection Sunday means, Christ has endowed you and empowered you to rise above the circumstances of this world and to remove the chains of Satan and the influences that Satan has on you. You ought to just tell your friend, I'm beyond that right now. Partying just don't interest me. I have a better party I need to go to. And you know, Christians have good parties. You ain't got to get naked to have a good party. You ain't got to get drunk to have a good party. The successfulness of a party is not measured by your drunkenness or how many clothes you can take off or how many women you can pick up and get phone numbers from. David had a good party when he came back, and he celebrated, and he danced and had a good time. And his wife said, no, that ain't the way the king's supposed to act. But David was celebrating his God. You have, and you know, the one thing I like about being a Christian is your joy of being a Christian continues on and on and on. And I believe in Nashville there's a 2 o'clock curfew.
11.
So your other party got to stop at 2 o'clock. You got to go home. And the law says, if you party too loud at your house and it disturbs the sanctity of my sleep, I can have you arrested. So even when you try to take your party home, you best take your party down 65 and drive into Alabama somewhere with it. Because your worldly party got to come to an end. But you know, just loving Christ is a joy. But he died and he rose that we might have life, that we might have the opportunity to go and serve him and share with him. That's what the resurrection means. Your life should be different. And your life can be different when you accept him. Wednesday night I said we have to move from membership to relationship. And when you decide to have a real relationship with Christ, things will change in your life. Things will begin to happen in your life. I'm not going to stand up here and lie to you and say they will happen overnight. But they will happen. And they will happen in due time. Because God wants your heart. He says, I stand at the door and knock. I'm alive. You may be going to the cemetery to see me and to celebrate, but I'm long from that. Matter of fact, we need to really stop killing Christ. He rose a long time ago and he's just standing down and looking at us while we look for eggs and stuff like that. Those are the church over. And we're going to extend an invitation. And we're going to invite you. The resurrection means a new life, a life of power, a life of joy, a life of prestige, a life of walking in the light, not being afraid. When you love the Lord, you really don't have to be concerned about what other folk think. Because when you're in heaven and they down there looking at you, it ain't much you can do. Tell your friend that you found someone that's better for you. Help them find Christ. But you have to find him